Okay, Kathleen, are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, hi all, this is Gareth from the iMoot team. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I'd like to thank Kathleen and Dave for putting together today a presentation on the little Moodle that could. Thank you. Away you go.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so as I was saying, I just had my webcam on for a minute. I've got to turn it off because it drives me crazy. You know what it's like. It's kind of like looking at yourself in the mirror all the time, and nobody likes that. So good afternoon, everybody, and we'll continue without the webcam on. It's funny, when we used to use webcams back in the good old days when I first started doing online conferences and online teaching, it was always a death knell. Like you would turn on your webcam and the system would slow right down. So I remember a few years ago at one of the iMoots, we all turned our cameras on in the final session just to see how many people there were, and it really got overloaded. But now it doesn't seem to matter as much. So technology, can't get ahead of it. Okay, so this afternoon, is my volume okay? I've been told that I'm too loud, and I've been told that I'm too soft. Can everybody hear me all right, or am I too loud or too soft, or how are you finding it? Yes, yeah. A little bit loud? Okay. I can turn it down a number of different ways. Does that help at all, Gareth? Okay, sure. All right, so let's jump right in. I'm here with my colleague Dave Arthur. We are faculty at the Nova Scotia Community College in Nova Scotia, Canada, and we have a Moodle that we've developed over several years, and we thought that it was just about time that we talked a little bit about it. So this whole presentation is about the history of how we set this thing up and what it looks like now. And I've been Moodling since about 2006, and my knowledge has grown exponentially over those years as I've been forced to deal with different administrative things. And every year I try and go to some kind of a moot, and when I do, the sessions that I usually like the best are the ones where people tell their stories. I find that you can learn an awful lot from other people's stories. So I'm hoping that along those lines, this presentation will help you understand a little bit more about your own Moodle and maybe take you a little bit further with it. If you have any questions or comments as we go along, I find people generally like to just talk in the chat window, and Dave is going to be dealing with any comments that come up there. So feel free to chat, or if you wanted to use your microphone and speak, feel free to do that as well. We'll try and deal with it as we go along. There's no need to wait till the end because this is just a conversation. So any input that you have or questions that you might have about what we're talking about, please feel free to ask as we go through these. So this is a story, as I said, of how some dedicated faculty of the Nova Scotia Community College developed an underground Moodle railway to help their students manage their learning. Now, there are a couple of key phrases in that statement. This train theme that we've got running through here, I'm sure that you all know the story of the little engine that could. Well, that's kind of what we were like. When we first started out on this adventure, we weren't at all sure of where we were going or what we were doing. And so as each year goes along and we become more and more entrenched in this Moodle business, we get a little bit more confidence with our system. And so it goes from, I'm not sure, to, yep, I'm pretty sure that what we've got going on here is a pretty solid system. So that's kind of the I think I can analogy, train analogy. And the other one is the underground railway, which historically was used to sort of, without the knowledge of people in the area, slip people from the United States to Canada to freedom. And ours is similar to that, except that it's more, we're operating on the, when we first started out with our Moodle, we were operating under the guise of it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. We didn't have the buy-in of our organization. So because we're IT people, we have often, sort of gone off and tried things out without asking anybody first before we did it. So that's kind of what our Moodle was like. So we were sort of flying below the radar, not in the mainstream at all, because we didn't want to draw too much attention to ourselves, which would then necessarily bring up a bunch of bureaucracy that might keep us from doing what we wanted to do. So that's where the underground part of it comes, and then the little engine that could. So first of all, first things first, who do we work for? The Nova Scotia Community College, its acronym is NSCC. There's Nova Scotia, Canada. We are a system of 13 different campuses across the province, and those red pins, this is a Google map, so that those are red Google pins. Each one of them represents a campus of the Nova Scotia Community Campus. We have 13 campuses, and we have 13,000 students, full and part-time. About between 7,000 and 8,000 are full-time, and they go to those 13 campuses. So if you don't recognize Nova Scotia, perhaps you'll recognize North America. So there's the Nova Scotia Community College on the east coast of North America. We're in Canada, and because the pins don't scale very well, we're suddenly very big in relation to the map. And to take it even further, here we are in the world. So depending on where you are, you can see where we are. We are sort of just a hop across the pond for Gareth, and we are in a completely different hemisphere from Gustavo. So depending on where everyone else is from, this is where the Nova Scotia Community College is in relation to you. So who are we? I'm Kathleen Stewart, and if we go back to that first map, the first Google map of the Nova Scotia Community College, I work where this little yellow star is right here in the Annapolis Valley campus. It's in Middleton, which is a town of about 2,000 people, and our site has about, along with our sister site, which is at a campus about 11 kilometers away, we have about 400 students. And the other presenter today is Dave Arthur, and he is from the Burridge campus of the Nova Scotia Community College, which is in Yarmouth. And that's a town of about 25,000 people, right down at the tip of Nova Scotia down here. So we both work at rural campuses, and so Moodle has been a lifesaver for us in rural campuses. We really appreciate having it. All right, so how did this start? Students had been groaning more and more as the internet became more and more entrenched in what we do, that they didn't have access to resources from outside the college. In order to be able to, we used to put our all our assignments, any sample code. We both teach IT, information technology, so code samples are a big deal. So we used to put those, and any assignments, any books that we had for working with our courses, we would put them all in what we called a common drive. But the common drive was in a Windows system within the Nova Scotia Community College infrastructure. So the students, when they went home at night, didn't have access to it. So they complained about that. And we thought, well, they're making a good point. We really should do something about this. So our first go-round wasn't a learning management system. We didn't really think of a learning management system at all up front because we didn't know there was a good open source one out there, and we just figured that it would be easier to use systems that we had available. So we had an externally accessible Unix system that we could put information on. So we took everything that was in our NSCC Common Drive and moved it to this Unix system. And I should say that this is just for me, like at the Annapolis Valley campus. It wasn't for the whole of the Nova Scotia Community College. It was just at our campus in the IT department. And so we put it on this Unix system and let the students go there to get it. And that sort of satisfied them a little bit, because now they could go to the Unix system at least and see what their assignments were, get some code, perhaps look at a book, whatever it was that they were looking for. However, that wasn't a really user-friendly solution, because it required them to know how to tunnel into the Unix system and to know Unix commands to be able to move around. So it wasn't sort of a cure-all for everything. It was just something we did at the time, which started us thinking. Then, right at the beginning of 2007, there's a research group within our organization, and that's actually located at my campus, and they won a Hewlett-Packard Technology for Teaching grant. And the idea of this grant was to aid our college in connecting with the community. So the research group had some research that they were doing, and they wanted to make it available to the community, so they did it through this technology grant. And what they did was they set up a Moodle. Okay, so here you can see on this slide, this is the first Moodle that I ever had exposure to, and there it says community mapping, and there it says collaborations. So these are the things that the HP project was working on, were these two right here. And one of the scientists who was involved in this community mapping project was a colleague of mine who also taught IT with me. And he was talking about this Moodle, and I said, could we use that for our courses as well? And he says, well, I don't see why not. We've got it and we're using it, but if we just create another category, we could put our courses in there. So that's how the first Moodle was born. We just borrowed it from another project. So see up here, it says Annapolis Valley Campus Core Courses. That is the first attempt at having things on the internet so that students didn't have to either be at the school or log into a Unix system in order to get access to their course resources. So that first year, starting in January 2007, there were 2 instructors, myself and my colleague. We had 11 courses, and they're listed right there. And we had about 50 users making use of those 11 courses. So that was the first thing. The HP project only lasted about a year and a half. So a year and a half later, we were up against a wall because the project was ending, but by then we were completely hooked on Moodle. So I went to another colleague of mine who is in control of our Unix systems, and I said to him, Kat, do you think that we have a server somewhere that we could use to put a Moodle on so that the students could get at it from outside the college and we could still maintain it? Well, it just so happened that he had been doing a project with the local primary to 12 school board, and he was maintaining an email system for them. But that email system had been taken over by the province, so we still had the server to serve the email, but there was no email on it. So it was perfect. We had an unused server. It was connected to the internet. It was all paid for, and we could use it. So we set up our first Moodle on that. So here's what our first Moodle looked like. It says now, rather than having AVC courses as one of the sections, it's the whole enchilada. So these are our course resources, and these are all the different categories that we had. We were running version 1.9 on this, and we had about 15 instructors using it. They had 38 courses and about 500 users. So it was all very kind of fly by the seat of your pantsy, because this is just something that we sort of looked at and thought might be a good idea to do, and sort of discovered it as we went along, and it worked really well, and the students liked it. So for those of you who are administrators and might be interested in this kind of thing, these are the system specifications for that original system. I can't pretend to know an awful lot about what this is, but I did ask, Piotr was my colleague who set this up for me. I asked Piotr what the system was, and he said it was 2 Intel-based Sunfire V60s that are served in tandem for data replication. It was a 32-bit system, and it had an Ubuntu operating system. So that's what we originally set up our Moodle on. All right, so that was in the summer of 2008. Later that fall, Dave Arthur and I, Dave is my colleague that is doing the chatting with you, and he and I are the ones who administer the Moodle. We have been friends for a long time. So in 2008, we went to a conference in Salt Lake City. It's the Conference on Information Technology. And while we were there, there was a Moodle session that was given by these guys from a Midwestern college in the United States, and they had set up their own Moodle, and they were talking about how they administered it and so forth. And Dave got so intrigued by this when we went to this session that he stayed afterwards and talked to these guys for a long time to get an idea of what was involved. And in fact, he learned so much from them that he came home from that and set up a second Moodle in an area that we call within our system our sandbox. So our sandbox is network 172, so all the IP addresses start with 172. And this is an area that the IT faculty and students use to play with things, to install software, to try different configurations without worrying about hurting the Nova Scotia Community College's real network. So it gives them a place to play that's separate from the rest of the school's network. So what Dave did was on that sandbox, he set up a Moodle. And it was using version 1.9 as well. And he and I, yeah, we can misbehave, that's a good point. He and I administered this, and it was used by faculty and staff from across Nova Scotia. So the ABC Moodle that we had back here, that was just for my campus in particular, and then Dave set up this one for other people in the NSCC, and we found that, you know, there were a number of people who were using that as well. So there are the specs for what Dave had for his Moodle when he had it running in the sandbox, the first one that we had running. It was just one box. It was a Dell. We had 300 gigabytes, and we're using FreeBSD, Apache MySQL, and PHP. Yes, that's another point I wanted to make. Even though the sandbox generally is separate from the college system, it was internet accessible, so people could get at us from the outside. So we ran like that for a couple of years, for 2008, 2009, and 2010. And this is a little pie chart that Dave did up for something else that we were doing a while ago, which just shows, as we got going and word spread, how our usage was broken down. Most of it was the School of Applied Arts and New Media. That is the school within our organization where the IT programs are run. But we also had a sizable chunk for the School of Trades and Technology, and then little tiny bits for the other schools in our college. So the point about this being the IT people is significant because once, like at the end of 2010, the dean of this school here asked us to create a Moodle pilot. So in March 2011, the NSCC finally said, okay, you guys are out there Moodling. We should probably recognize this and help you out in whatever way we can. And the reason that that they were supportive was that the dean of the school was a former IT faculty member. So he had actually used our Moodle when he was a faculty member, and now he was saying we should make this available to everyone. So this is when we started feeling a little bit more confident about what we were doing and how we were doing it. Up until this point, we'd been running two kind of separate systems because it was working and we didn't want to mess with it. But now that we had the blessing of our organization, we were able to merge the two together into one system. And, we had support and backing from the NSCC, so that made it, better. So that first pilot that we did was version 2. And that was a hard thing for us because up until that point we had been running version 1.9, and version 2 just came out around that point, I think, right at the beginning of that year maybe, or we found out about it at the beginning of that year. And the leap from 1.9 to 2 was gigantic. The reason being that when 2 originally came out, they didn't have any software to help you transfer courses from 1.9 to 2. So we had to download some third-party software and run there was no upgrade path, that's right. So we had to download some third-party software and run each course through this conversion process so that we could read it into our 2.0 system. Now, some teachers were so put off by this that they just recreated their courses in the new one rather than bringing it over from the 1.9 system. But a lot of them did do the conversion, and it went okay. It took time and energy, and I remember that spring it being pretty hectic, getting people moved on to the new system. But it was worth it in the end because 2.0 is, it was. Frank, that's right. 2.0 was great, and there were things about 1.9 that I can't even remember them now, but I remember at the time being pretty growly that they had changed things from 1.9 that I was used to using and really liked, and they didn't have anything equivalent to it in 2.0. But like I say, that was long enough ago now that I don't even remember. But I know that there are people out there. I got some feedback yesterday from someone who is still using 1.9. So I know there are people in the Moodle world who are still tied to our good old 1.9 Moodle. So that's it's still being used. All right, so here we are. We're on 2.0, and this is the system. Now, at this point, we moved from just one box to 2 separate boxes, so 2 different systems that we had the stuff on. And the web and storage was on one, and then our SQL, the database backend was on another. And we had, is 1,000 gigabytes a terabyte? We had a terabyte between the 2 of them, and a RAID 5 configuration. Thanks, Dave. And we're still using Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So it was, basically the same system, just bigger, because we are getting more and more popular. So in that first year, September 2011, the big thing for us besides going to 2.0 was the NSCC was allowing us to use their network authentication. When the students come to school, they log into the NSCC network and they have a username and a password. We were able to use that username and password as the login for our Moodle. And that made a huge difference because another administrative nightmare for us was keeping track of usernames and passwords. Students would create a username password combination and then they would forget it. And they wouldn't even know if their username was Stuarka or K Stewart or Kathleen or, Snuggles. There was no consistency in the naming for the username, so we often had students get lost. Once we could use the NSCC username and password, all that worry went off the table. The only thing we had to worry about once we had that set up, is that they specified an email address in their profile so we could send them notes. But other than that, it was great. So that first year that we were in operation, we had 25 instructors using the system. They had 83 courses running, and we had 643 users. So if you go back a few slides to the first system that I had, 2 instructors, 11 courses, 50 users, and now 3 years later it's 25 instructors, 83 courses, and 643 users. And these, originally it was just at my own site, so if anybody had any problems with anything, we could just go talk to each other and figure things out. Now these instructors were all across the province, so online became a much more viable option for us. So that was the first year. Then in the second year, the interest in the pilot just went through the roof. We went from, what did I have there, 25 instructors? Yeah, 25 instructors to 91, up to 304 courses and 1,300 users. And we moved to version 2.2. And you'll also notice here that in terms of our confidence as administrators, if you look at just the look and feel of the site, there's the first year, and here's the second one. This is a customized banner here, and this is just the Moodle default banner, and that was a big deal to me, figuring that out. And I think that I've mentioned this already, but Dave and I are full-time faculty, so our Moodling is done on our own nickel, really. We get a lot of support from our academic chairs for things, but we teach full time, so we Moodle in our so-called spare time. So I say that because at this Moot I've seen some some fantastic Moodle sites, and I'm feeling a little humbled by our little site, but it. So trying to justify my existence by saying, hey, I'm learning, and I am. So now this year, so 2013 was the fall of 2013, so this year just wrapped up for us. In fact, we still have people using the system, and we will till the end of June, but there's the current system, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. 78 instructors, so the blush that was the explosion last year is now over, and we've actually dropped instructors. We have 78 instructors this year. We had 91 last year, and that's because people who were kind of kicking the tires last year, some of them have fallen by the wayside, and that's fine. We don't mind that, but you'll notice that in terms of the number of courses that we have, we've gone from 300 to nearly 500. So we only have 78 instructors, but they're using the system much more. So they're 78 committed instructors who are actually using the system for their courses. So we got 500 courses now and about 1,500 users. So that's where we sit currently. So that's a little bit about our history. The current system that we use, we've now moved to virtual machines, and those are the 2 VMs that we have. Then we have the VMware host and the storage host where we have an iSCSI set up. So those are all the particulars for anybody who likes that kind of architecture detail. I missed something, Dave, didn't I? I didn't talk about Tanzania. At the same time that we were doing this system, Dave and another colleague of ours were over in Tanzania. They went for 2 different years, and they set up a system for a college in a Moodle system for a college in Tanzania as well. So our Moodling wasn't just restricted to our own college. These academic exchanges that we did, we were setting up Moodles in other countries as well. Yes, and that was in 2012, wasn't it? I had the note down here, but I missed it. Sorry. All right, so here's our current system. If anybody would like to, you can actually go to the site. Now, I have the URL here. Just a sec. I'll cut it and paste it in the chat window if anybody wants to. Oh, I already did it. There you go. So there's you can just click on that in the chat window if you want to. At least I think you can. There again, I'm thinking Illuminate, collaborate. Blackboard's collaborate now. But anyway, that's the URL. And even though you can't get logged in, you can sort of just see what it looks like. I also have it in my presentation space in the iMoot, in the activities and resources. There's a link to the website there if you want to go there and get it. So feel free to wander around as much as you're able. When it gets down to the course level, you probably won't be able to get in because the courses are all, they have enrollment keys in order to access them, or they have manual enrollment. But you can at least see what the setup looks like if you would like. I can tell you a few things about it. We use the Afterburner theme. I think I heard about that at an iMoot a couple of years ago, but it could have been at the Canadian Moodle Moot. I can't remember which one. Anyway, this Afterburner theme was developed by, I'm gonna say this wrong, so I'm not gonna bother. Anyway, the guy that developed it, I heard him give a talk at one of the moots, and it's really quick and it's really easy to. Was it Mary? I thought it was a guy. Yeah, I don't know. See, that's why I didn't want to say anything, because I knew I would get it wrong if I did. Maybe he was just talking about it. Anyway, I should know that. That's bad prep work on my part. But anyway, it used to be an add-on to Moodle when we first started using it, and now it's part of the standard set of themes that are available. So I liked it because it was so quick, and it's customizable, and it's very easily customizable too. You can customize it from within the Moodle interface. You don't necessarily have to go to the directories on the server. You can actually just do it through Moodle. So this customized banner, that's a JPEG, and I have to make it a specific size. It's like 170 pixels by 350 or something like that. I don't remember what it is, but you make it this specific size, and then you just add it through the theme settings in the site administration, and that's what that's all about. So that was easy. Also, this center panel is customized. Rather than showing any courses or categories, I created my own HTML page, and again, I'm an IT instructor, and web programming is one of the things I teach. It was Mary. Okay. I'm sorry. Mary. Thanks, Gareth. So all this is here is just an HTML file that has some Creative Commons images here that you can click on to go to any of the 5 different schools that we have at our college. And then we've got a section for other learning. That's things like continuing ed courses. And then down here we've got some faculty resources as well. So this is all just sort of HTML links that are linked to the different categories using IDs. So that's that center panel. And then we have this FAQ for faculty. I wanted something so that when faculty log in, they would see these frequently asked questions, but when students log in, they wouldn't. So what I did was the non-editing role on the front page, I added all my faculty to that role, and then just set this HTML block to say only faculty or only the non-editing teacher could see this. So that gives them access to that FAQ. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention here. I lost a slide somehow, and I don't know how I did it. But the other thing I like about Afterburner are these flyout here, because you can add your own custom menu items. So this NSCC links, if you click on that, and anybody that's on the page can try that, those are just policy documents that relate to all the courses that we teach. Things like rights and responsibilities, grade expectations, which is what we expect from our students, all those kind of general things, rather than having everybody repeat them course after course after course. We just create some files for them and then link them using these NSCC links up here. So that's another thing I like about Afterburner, is the ability to add stuff up here in that ribbon. The frequently asked questions, if you click on that, it takes you to a file that I have in one of the Moodle faculty learning courses, and it's just, again, just an HTML file. And it's made up of all the questions that faculty have asked me over the years, and then the answers are the answers that I've given them. So we used to have this in a discussion forum, but it was difficult to go from one. When we were doing updates, the discussion forum was getting cleared out. Like when we went from 2.2 to 2.5, the discussion forum for some reason got blanked. So I thought, I can't lose this every time we update our version. So I took it and changed it from a discussion forum into just an HTML file. So this has got internal links in it. So I took every question that everyone has ever asked me, and I put a bullet in here for it. And then when they click on any one of those, it will take them to the question and answer. So if they click on Allow Assignment Extensions for Individual Students, that tells you what the original question was and the answer that I gave for it, or that somebody gave. Dave answered some of these questions too, so it could have been him that answered it. So that's how the frequently asked questions works, and it's good for the faculty because I think a lot of times they go there instead of coming to us to ask questions, and it's good for us because when they ask questions that have already been answered, all I have to do is go to the FAQ that deals with that, copy the link, and then email them back, and I say, go to this link and you'll have your answer. And then that sort of gets them used to going to that resource to get answers to their questions. And every year there are fewer and fewer new questions that people ask, but I update it on a yearly basis to help them with their questions that they have. The other thing that we do in our current system is we have a little tiny bit of course standardization. We really object to people dictating the look and feel of the Moodle too much. Within our organization, the Nova Scotia Community College, there's an online section in the college, and Dave and I have both taught online. And they have a learning management system that they lock down so that you have to have your course has to look like this. It has to contain these things. You have to have these blocks. They don't use Moodle. They use a different package, but they're so strict about who can do what, where, when, that it really becomes more of a hindrance than a help. So in reaction to that, and because we're sort of natural renegades anyway, we sort of object to any kind of standardization. However, that being said, as any of you who are administrators know, you have to have a certain amount of standardization. Otherwise, the product just becomes, too unwieldy. So what we have finally sort of narrowed it down to is they have to use the Afterburner theme. We used to allow them to do their own themes within the course, but the students were complaining because they would go to one course and it would be purple and pink, and they'd go to another course and it would be green, and they'd go to another course and it would be black and white, and they got confused about where they were and who they were and all that kind of stuff. So we don't allow them to change the theme within the course anymore. Now, they can change anything else they want about the course. They can choose the blocks that they have on the sides. They can choose topics or weeks, whatever they want in there, but they can't change the theme. So across the top, it always says NSCC, Moodle for Blended Delivery. It always has the links, and it always has the current location. So students can go from one course to another without worrying about changes. The other thing that we don't let instructors change anymore is the name, the long name or the short name in the course. And that's because we were having a hard time searching for things, because people were naming their courses, like we asked them to name them with the course code followed by the course name followed by the instructor name. But some people see this course code. It has 4 letters, a space, and then 4 numbers. Some of them were putting the space in. Some of them weren't. Some of them were putting in a dash. Some of them were putting the name of the course before the course code. Some of them weren't putting their name on the course, and that became confusing to us. So in order to be able to easily search for something, and when you're working with 500 courses, that's kind of nice. We lock these down so that they can't edit these. So when I create a course, I put these things, those 2 things in there for them, and everything else I let them update themselves. So that's about the only standardization we do within a particular course. So as I said, Dave and I are the administrators. My responsibility is to interact with the users. I help people set up courses. I actually create courses for them. I create courses. I answer any questions that they have. No, they can't create courses themselves anymore. They used to be able to do that back in the day when we first started up. But again, it was sort of getting out of hand. So now they just send me a note and say, can I please have a course? And we never say no, so it's not a problem. But we like to sort of make sure it's in the right category. No, because there were so few of us in the beginning that, so like we went from 15 to 90 within the space of about a year and a half. Okay, Frank, thanks for coming. So it was easy to say to the 15, look, we've got to do this. And they were fine about it. Truthfully, and that's one of my slides coming up, the support we get from the teachers in the system, it has been great. So yeah, I take care of the front end, and Dave takes care of the back end. As he says, I'm the front end and he's the back end. So if we were one of those horses, anyway, you know what I'm getting at. So he does all the system maintenance. So he does the updates. He makes sure the servers keep running. He does backups, full system backups. He makes sure the licenses are all up to date. He finds us old hardware that we can repurpose for our system. He set up the virtual machines, all that kind of stuff. And I deal with the students. Yes. Yeah, not students, faculty. And I should mention that too. Most of my dealings are with faculty. Students, if they have any questions, they go to their faculty. Now, oftentimes the faculty will come to us and say, this is what's happening with the student, but we don't deal with students directly very much. We generally deal with them through their faculty member, which is nice. It's nice because, as I say, we're doing this as a side thing, and that's another thing, Melissa, about the pushback. Because this isn't part of our real job, people don't complain. They are very grateful for what we're able to offer, and we don't get a lot of complaints generally at all, which is kind of nice. What we do for the faculty, we have training workshops every year. It's a 2-day session, and I do the training. Yes, that's right. I do the training, and it generally takes place in May and June, and I'll go around to different campuses and offer training if there are a number of people that want it. And otherwise, people come to my campus and join in the training there, or if they can't make it, they'll do it online. So they'll do a session like this where they're working along with us where we're doing the face-to-face training. So I'll often do a blended session where I've got my headset on, talking to people online, and I've also got a room full of faculty doing some training. And this little flow chart that's here, this is what I give people when they start their session. Again, IT, but this is basically just saying, what do you have? Here's how we go from having nothing to having a running course, and we do all these blue things in the run of a day. So the first day is basics, and the second day people will ask for things that they want some help with, and second day topics are things like making good use of the grade book, different types of quizzes, how we do specialized quizzes like math teachers. There are really good quizzes for math teachers, so that kind of thing. We did a session last year on the workbook, rubrics. We've done one on rubrics and things like that, just advanced topics that aren't part of your basic training workshop, but that people often are curious about and want to know a little bit more about. And what we'll do is we'll think up I'll ask them to send me topics, and then together we'll just sort of explore whatever topic it is. And if I can find somebody that knows something about it, then we'll get them to sort of tell us how they use the particular thing that we're working with. We also have a number of faculty resources. That's one of the course categories on our site. We have the curriculum development is basically a sandbox for setting up courses. When people have new courses that they're getting ready for the following year, they can start them in the curriculum development area, and then we move them out into the live area once they're ready to go. And we have the Moodle administration is just our own spot for any testing or notes that we have for the current version. The Moodle training courses are training courses for faculty, and there are a number of, there's an intro to Moodle for faculty, and then there's more Moodle, and then we have a course for our Moodle 2.5. When we went to Moodle 2.5, there were a number of new features, so Dave did up a little course showing how the new features worked. And then the general interest is just anything else that doesn't sort of fit another in another area. We've got a couple of campuses have department discussion groups in this area. It's so the larger departments can have an area where they can sort of discuss, infrastructure problems, or they can put their schedules up there for the semester, that kind of thing, without students being able to see it. And as I said before, Melissa had asked about pushback. We're tremendously lucky because, like I say, this isn't part of our job. This is something that we've chosen to do on the side, that we're being supported by the college because they see it as a good thing. But because of the way it is, people don't complain. They are appreciative of what we do, and when we mess up, it's always, I'm really sorry I did that, I'll try to do better, and they always say, you're doing a really good job, thank you for what you do. So they appreciate the effort, and it sounds kind of self-congratulatory, but it is a positive experience. We haven't had, like the NSCC at first kind of tried to ignore us, but once they decided that we were on to something good here, they have been very helpful, getting us set up and getting us running. We don't ask for a lot, so they are pretty happy to provide old servers and access to internet licensing and all that kind of stuff. Our academic chairs have been really supportive. really supportive, letting us travel to see each other. Every year we get together and do an upgrade. Actually, this year we did it in our own separate campuses because it was a minor upgrade. And or when I have to go do training at another campus, I get travel money for that, so that's really good. Yeah, our data centers, the NSCC data center, they have servers. When they expire, when they're no longer under warranty, I guess that's 2 years, is it, Dave? Then we get their old servers from them. So that's a good deal for everybody. 3 years, yeah. So yeah, the IT services have been great, the academic chairs have been great, and our users are really good. So that is our story. Thank you for allowing us to share it with you. Does anybody have any questions, any other questions as we wrap up here? I should say I would really love it if you could give us a little bit of feedback. There's a feedback activity. I don't know if any of you guys ever used feedback. I haven't used it a lot. I've used it like 3 or 4 times. There's the link to it if you want that. But it's in the presentation section for this presentation down under the activities and resources. If you wanted to go do that, it's just 7 little questions that are just sort of click, 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 and any comments at the end. And if you do the feedback, then you can print yourself off a certificate of participation. And it actually says you've completed this course because the certificates are pretty hardwired. You have to get into the directory where they're kept in order to change them. But it does sort of say thank you for participating in this workshop.